Hello and good morning. This is a recorded presentation for the parents who are unable to make it to the our first Parent Tech Bites. It was regarding Safer Internet Day, how to keep safe online, and let's create a better internet together, marking the Safer Internet Day in February. Hopefully, you can see this. Before we start, I would like to talk about the work that has taken place during the last year. When I came to NCBIS, I didn't feel there was technology vision that was driving all of the technology standards. So together with teachers, we sat down and we came up with a shared technology vision called at NCBIS, we view technology as a tool to help us create, collaborate, challenge, and reflect. We also work together in creating a digital citizenship definition, and our collective definition was and is at NCBI's digital citizenship is the responsible use of technology to learn, create, and participate. What we should be able to see now over the coming months and years, the digital citizenship definition and the technology vision statement that should be embedded within our curriculum, our technology, and slowly we should be able to that should have an impact. The focus of this session is to mark the Safer Internet Day. I don't believe a single day will really make a difference. For that reason, we decided to have the Safe Internet Day as a starting point for many discussions. So this would be our weekly session. So every Thursday at 8 a.m. in the computing room, I invite all parents to come and discuss all technology-related issues. Some of the discussions I will initiate. I will send advance notices to say we'll talk about that. Other days it will be just drop-in sessions. Bring your tech. If you want us to have control tech at home, you've got laptop issues that you want security on, we're more than happy to do that. So I want it to be a bit of both. But this would be the starting point. As my question started, I sent an email out with a presentation with a poster saying, "Is it safe online?" And I think to discuss whether it's safe online, we must also understand whether it's safe online, which is the real world. I think there can be a difference between the two. We tend to be more cautious offline in the real world, simply because our parents from a very young age we've been told, "Hey, don't talk to a stranger. Hey, cross road safely." This came from school, this came from parents, this came from people who care about us. Whereas online, I think the children do not receive a standard answer, or at least a response that is continuously revisited. And so for that reason, I think it's a very important, in my view, is it safe online? I think it is, but it can be a lot safer. I want to share something with you, and bear that in mind while we discuss the future comments.
Looks like rain again today. Dark clouds gather and fill the sky. Don't know how to talk to you, just know how to say goodbye.
Have you actually got a driver's license? I don't think so. Did you see it back there?
Go back where you came from. Learn to speak English.
Go back where you came from. What's wrong with you, Harry? Stop crying.
Get over here. You don't want to speak. I've had enough of you.
Sorry, I had to show such a drastic video, but I think the point is very simple. Kids see, kids do. They copy us. They're young minds. However, or whatever relationship we have, they will try to mimic that. And we want to make it better. Before we carry on with the continued discussion, I want to mention something called a digital footprint. I'm sure we've all been to the beach at some point, and when you're walking in the beach, it leaves a footprint. That footprint can be easily erased by the sea, or you could just put more sand on it, and that footprint just disappears. Whereas a digital footprint, it's somewhat different, because the work that we do online, it's on somebody else's computer. So when we access, for example, Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or some of these apps, when we access them, we're actually working on somebody else's computer. We're putting our username and password and accessing their computer, which they've allowed us to access. And they back that up on a regular basis. Because they back it up on a regular basis, although we may have deleted it, it's still available on their server. So that's what it's meant by digital footprint can never be erased, because it's always there. It may not be visible, but it's always there as a data collection point. It'll always be there. So just bear that in mind when we talk about activities online, what it means to do activities online. Anyone recognize this gentleman? Sadly passed away, but I hope you do. Anyone recognize this gentleman? I've put them on the opposite ends because both of them have founded two companies that have had a huge impact on our lives. Some maybe really strong Apple supporters, and other maybe very strong Microsoft supporters. Whatever your view on technology, the reality is both of these companies and both of these individuals have had a huge, huge impact as leaders, as tech leaders. Now, I want to go on to what I think is really, really important, and that's tech use at home. Right. No one ever pulled out an iPad or computer. The kids did not seem addicted at all to devices. Now, who said that? A very famous person mentioned that as an example and as quoted. Steve Jobs. Who mentioned this? My son said, "Am I going to have limits like this my whole life?" And I said, "No. When you move away, you can set your own screen limits." And this was Bill Gates. I would also like to quote you from the current CEO of Apple. He doesn't have kids, and he says, "I don't have a kid, but I have a nephew that I put some boundaries on. There are some things that I won't allow. I don't want them on a social network." Now, you've had three major tech giants in terms of their views on technology and how it's used with the people they love. Very, very clear. But I want to stop with these three. I want to carry on. I want to give you an example. I want to paint a picture of how other tech giants and their views of technology at home, not as a business, but as mums, dads, uncles, aunties, people who have a say on their loved ones. So, for example, Chris Anderson, CEO of 3D Robotics, very famous in the robotics industry, he says, "My kids accuse me and my wife of being fascists and overly concerned about tech. And they say that none of their friends have the same rules. This is rule number one. There are no screens in the bedroom, period. Ever." And I get that. At our house, we try to make sure that whenever that they're using tech, it needs to be at a place where we can see them. In an area which is a shared area. If you look at, as an example, pedophiles, one of the first questions a pedophile asks a child is, "Where are you sitting?" And bear that in mind, when a child is speaking online, in their mind, they're speaking to another child. So that question really doesn't seem out of place. But a paedophile who's hiding behind a screen, trying to be somebody or pretending to be somebody who they're not, the first question is, where are you sitting? And if the answer is, oh, I'm in the bedroom, the likelihood of the child being in the bedroom on their own is very high, as opposed to, no, I'm in the kitchen, my whole family's here, or I'm in the front room, or I'm in the sitting room, or I'm in the lounge area. The likelihood of other people having visibility to the screen is much, much higher. So that is one of the first questions that a pedophile will ask, and we need to be aware of where they're sitting. And you'll find that this will reoccur from other tech giants. And Prosovi advised to Facebook, he says there should be a strong distinction between time spent consuming, like watching YouTube or playing video games, and time spent creating on screens. And I think there's a huge difference between consuming content as opposed to creating content. Because when you're consuming content, there isn't a lot of learning taking place. You may learn something, but it's not purposeful. You're not being productive. Where if you're creating, even if it's just content, if you're creating something online, it doesn't become tedious. You're actually learning a process. There's thought process. There's productivity going on, and there is something called an end result. You want an end result at the end of it, even if you spend 2 hours on it, as opposed to watching a video and being sucked into the algorithms of YouTube. Alex from Outcast, she says her youngest son, who is 5 at that time during the call, is never allowed to use gadgets during the week. And her other children, 10 to 13, are allowed only 30 minutes a day on school nights. This resonates with us at home. My eldest will be 13, and the youngest will be 8 very soon. On weekdays, we have a very strict rule of not watching TV, as an example, or YouTube. No gadgets on weekdays. On weekends, we allow them. On weekdays, if it's homework related, if it's a direct reason to have access to an electronic device, we allow it. Otherwise, it's a no-no. They need to earn that. Sorry, wrong quote on there. But another tech giant, their 2 young boys have hundreds of books, yes, physical ones, and they can pick up and read at any time. It's so important to have books at home. As fantastic as it is to have electronic books, I just think paper and printed paper just makes a huge difference. Leslie Gold from Tech Media, she says, we have a strict no screen time during the week rule for our kids. But you have to make allowances as they get older and need a computer for school. And again, I think they're just learning and making different rules for their own kids. They know their kids better. But they have a strict no screen during the week, which is school time. Di Costolo, the CEO of Twitter, approved unlimited gadget use as long as their 2 teenage children, were in the living room. They believe too many time limits could have diverse effects on their children. The focus here is the unlimited, but as long as that they could see, the parents could see what their kids were doing. I think visibility is extremely important. Lady Gates, she said that we often do family trips to places where there is no electricity, no Wi-Fi, and no phone service. Hopefully at some point later on, we can discuss some of that. I have some views on electric devices in and around the house and where they should be placed. Electric devices or internet things, maybe a smartwatch. I have my own views. I would love to share some of those views with you at coming Tech Bites. Alexis says, the Reddit founder, we're strict about it. It's not that they don't have access to screens, it's that they are not going to be able to use them unmonitored. They're allowed, kids need to know they will be monitored, they will be restricted, they will have clear boundaries. Last one, Alexis, it says that I set time limits on all my kids' devices. Alexis is a celebrity and a business owner, not a Reddit founder. He said very, very clear, I have limits on all my kids' devices. So what is it? What's the one thing that all these CEOs, tech giants, what do they do? What do they know and that we do not? What is that? And I think it's boundaries. And this is the focus of today. And this is the focus of staying safe online. It's creating boundaries for kids. I think it's extremely important that we teach the boundaries at a very, very young age. So, for example, at home, although not as strict as it used to be when our kids were younger, we had a very strict policy of no devices at dinner time. None at all. So if they wanted to have a conversation, they would have conversations with us rather than the devices. And just like in my picture, it shows a clear line in a swimming pool. When kids are being taught how to swim, we would never chuck a kid in the deep end. We will sort of put the feet in first, and then slowly into shallow end, and then get them used to the water. Then they play with the water. Then it sort of moves up and develops up as their strength grows within the water. Then they can go into deeper waters. Then this is the deep end. And just like that, we need to slowly guide our kids into the internet world, to the online world. And if we just give them a device, give them internet access without any boundaries, without any visibility to us as parents, I think it's extremely dangerous. We would be taking chances. It's literally like allowing a child just to cross the street from one end to the other without any clear guidelines, without any clear prior or previous information about this. So I think boundaries are key, and all of these tech giants, all of them, they have one thing in common. Boundaries are very, very clear. Boundaries are different from family to family, but what is clear is that they all have boundaries. That is number one. Two, that a lot of them have, in terms of where they allow to have kids to use the technology, in visible areas, not in the bedrooms, where it's quiet and really you can't monitor a lot of the things. There are software that you can install. At our house, we have an Apple ecosystem. It means we have the Apple TV, we have iPads, MacBooks, iPhones. Our kids, for example, my youngest doesn't have a phone. There's a long way till he will have a phone. My eldest, we only just gave her a mobile phone, and that's an iPhone where I have control over the password, I have control over the iCloud. Permission is required for every single app that needs to be installed. Permission is required for contacts to be installed. Permission is required, or we've blocked incoming calls to people who are not within the contact list, so you can restrict that automatically. Messages will not come, phone calls will not come if they're not in the address book. It's inconvenient for sure, but it's safety first. I can look at it, my wife and I can look at the devices, whether it's the iMac or MacBook or the iPad or the iPhone. We can look at the devices of our kids. We know what they're doing, how much time they're spending on each device, because we get that data from Apple. And that's one of the reasons why we've chosen Apple as an ecosystem. It just gives a lot more visibility, a lot more control as a parent. I think the other thing we need to concentrate on, so there's boundaries and visibility, is less is more. And let's hear from Tim Cook. I have a lot of respect for him. And let's hear what he has to say about being less.
I know you've seen it too, Tim. You can go into a restaurant and you can see a couple, maybe even on a first or second date, and they're both just staring at their phones.
Yeah.
What's it doing to us?
What is it doing to us? I think everybody has to make their own decision about how they date and so forth. I'm the last person that's going to advise
But
that.
you know what I'm saying.
I'm certainly not an expert on it myself. But I think what we wanted to do was to give people the tools so they have a true north. Like for me and I think many others were kind of surprised by how much they were using it and picking it up in notifications. I hope everyone dials back if they want to, right?
So the CEO of Apple is saying don't pick up your phone as much?
I'm saying we made the phone not so that you'll use it all the time. We made the phone to make your life better. And everybody has to decide for his or herself what that means. But for me, my simple rule is, if I'm looking at the device more than I'm looking into someone's eyes, I'm doing the wrong thing.
I do apologize for for the technical issue here. But I think the message is very clear. Less is more. If we're picking up our devices more than we should, it's a problem. Kids will pick up on that. So they'll end up picking up their devices more. I'll give an example during the presentation. One of the things I really dislike when I come into school is I see kids who know each other. I know they know each other. They know each other. And I will see kids like this, literally having their mobile phones and their heads down. And they're communicating, they're talking with their phone as opposed to speaking to their friends they haven't seen, the night before. They're on their phone. And I think, as Tim Cook said, if we're spending too much time on the phone, and I think that's the wrong way of doing it. We need to be able to communicate. Phones have almost become our go-to tool to avoid rejection. Because when you start up a conversation and somebody didn't hear you or they don't want to talk about it, that's a rejection. To avoid that, we automatically go to the phone. When somebody doesn't want to talk and just like, I'm really sorry, not in a good mood, can I just not talk? Rather than avoid that, we go on the phone. It's a lot of avoidance, and I think what avoidance generally creates is pushing away matters that really, really need to be discussed. So I think we need to be careful on how much we use and rely on technology. My personal view on technology, less is more. We need to be more productive. If we are more productive when we use technology, our kids are likely to do the same. For example, on my phone, I have notifications turned off. Unless I check. So email, my WhatsApp, my Signal, my other apps, they're not pushed out. One or two apps are, and I'm in control of when they're turned on and off, but generally, notifications are turned off. I'm in more control. Right, I want to see a message now as opposed to, ping, I'm looking at it, ping, and then you're in the habit. Try it yourself. How often do you look that you've got a message and without even pinging? And that's just an indication. That would be an indication that, look, maybe we're spending too much time on our devices. Online actions have offline consequences. It's so dangerous that how much of the online consequences or online actions can have offline consequences. Megan, unfortunately, is one of those offline consequences. Jessica, unfortunately, is one of those offline consequences. Tyler, unfortunately, is one of those offline consequences, and Amanda. And there are, unfortunately, so many more. They all took their own life because of various reasons. Because somebody said something bad about them, it made them feel uncomfortable. Because a picture was shared that was inappropriate, because they felt they were sharing it with somebody they trusted. Because they were called names. And it all happened online, not in person. And it really, really is a sad state of affair where what people say online can have a deep and sad impact offline. So I do want to make that clear. That we need to teach our kids on how to behave online. And really, it should be the same as how we behave offline. There shouldn't be 2 or 3 personalities that exist amongst us. Let's look at an example of friends and chat and the difference between offline and online and how do we behave. So as an example, offline world, in the real world, are we likely to talk to a complete stranger? The probability is no. We're not. Again, the issue I talked about rejection. People are not likely to, because they don't want to face rejection. So there is that barrier because we look at the eye contact, we look at facial expressions, we look at body language. That in itself is communication that we need to teach our kids. But offline, we work different, and that's just the reality. Would you know who you're talking to? Offline, we tend to be less trustful. It's hard to pretend to be somebody you're not because of all the languages and signals our body is sending. It's different. Online, however, you're more likely to be, add somebody as a friend, because it doesn't matter. I can just add somebody as a friend, and you don't realize the impact or the information you're sharing as a result of just adding them as your friend. By the way, ask your kids, whichever social networks that they're on, ask them, oh, by the way, who's your friend list? Oh, have you seen them in person? And have you seen them in person? And as confident as I can be, I think you'll find a lot of their friends are online friends only. And I think we need to question that, how we use these online tools. People are not always honest about who they are, because a lot of them try to be who they're not, because there's a barrier. And there's no accountability. So they can be whoever, say whatever, without accountability. Whereas offline, the accountability is rejection. The accountability, I might get caught out. So the huge difference. 50% of young people find it easier to be themselves online. And that in itself, I think, is worrying, because where we should be able to be who we are, it is in the real world. And more likely to say harmful things and upsetting things online, because of the lack of consequences, because of the lack of rejection. People are likely to be, sadly, unfortunately, more open to saying harmful and upsetting things. What you share, difference between online and offline. So, for example, in the real world, you're not likely to tell a complete stranger where you live, your phone number, your full name, what you do, what your salary is. Culturally, there may be differences, for example, in Egypt and England, in the Middle East, or in Europe. We're not talking about that, but just generally. In the real world, we're not likely to feel comfortable in sharing that information. In offline world, in the real world, would you really want over 500 million people to see your pictures? Probably not. Would you be happy if your friend shared unattractive or any picture of you? Somebody's taken a picture and passed it on. I think the courteous, the nice thing would be, look, I've got this picture, can I share it? Somebody wants to see it. Or if I share it, somebody else. I think that is a normal thing to do offline in the real world. Would you want to be sharing your whole history? I went to this school, I went to this university, I got this grade, I worked for this. The likelihood is you're probably not going to share all of that. Whereas online, however, it's very different. We are more likely to share some of the information. Sometimes we don't know. For example, on a mobile phone, when we take a picture on our mobile phones, as an example, there is built-in metadata. There is data that's taken within the picture. So the location, the time, what phone you used, all of that is embedded within the picture. So when you share a picture, although you think you're just sharing a picture, you're sharing a lot more data that's built in. You have to remove that data physically before you share it. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are not aware of that. If you post videos or pictures, fundamentally posting it on a massive billboard. Here's who I am. Some people would like it. I think a lot of people don't want it to be available to the rest of the world. You really ask friends about posting. So when you post your picture, you've got friends on there. Very rarely do we get permissions from our friends, look, I'm just going to share it. We happily share it online without asking. And everyone can see what you did on the weekend, because you're sharing all of that on the weekend. And I think that privacy is really important. But we don't think about these consequences when we do things online. So there is a difference between how type of friends we make, and how we chat and who we chat to, what we share and how we share. There's a huge difference between the two. Studies do suggest that kids' tech use is dominated by long hours of entertainment. It means they're just consumers. They consume YouTube, they consume TikTok videos, they consume shorts, which are on either Instagram or on YouTube. They're just consuming. And that is increasing rather than decreasing. And the majority of 8 to 18, from the Kaiser Family Foundation, the majority of 8 to 18-year-olds say they don't have any rules about the type of media content they can use. It means majority feel there are no boundaries. Kids need boundaries. It's imperative that we set boundaries. What type of boundaries? What our family's culture dictates is very different to what somebody else's family's culture would dictate. What is clear, I hope, from the numerous examples that I've given from tech giants that boundaries are non-negotiable. What boundaries they are, that is negotiable depending on family dynamics, family culture. I really think we need to move towards creating clear boundaries and having clear guidelines where they can and cannot use technology. So what do? We're creating. I'm giving sessions to teachers, training. Training them on things like custom search engines, on how you can create custom search engines. But the top one is awareness. We're starting with awareness. With students, we've got the curriculum leads in primary and the secondary schools. They're pushing towards safer, doing activities related to Safe Internet Day, how to be safe online. This month and the next month, they'll be doing more curriculum-led activities within their curriculum. We're going to give them more advice to the kids, but all starts with awareness. We're going to be creating a lot more awareness about being safe online. With the parents, training, workshops, one-to-one sessions, all of them are open, but the starting point is awareness. With all three, teachers, students, and parents, for me, the key point is creating awareness, even with just one person. And that one person will talk to another person and another person. Creating awareness about these matters is really, really important. And I think it's the starting point, but not the end. I'd like to share another example. Hopefully, there will be no tech issues.
Children are like sponges. Absorbing everything around them. Especially from you. Model good and healthy behavior. Give your child the best start in life. Call 1-888-FIRST-5LA.
Kids are like sponges, especially when they're young. As they get older, I think the sponges really get full and they don't want any more input from you. But when they're young, I think they are like sponges and they want more and more information. So the good behavior that we model, they will copy. So let's make a good, healthy habit. Good, healthy IT habits, technology habits. The earlier, the younger they are, and if we can make that change amongst us all, I think it'll just be easy for our kids to follow because they'll simply be doing what we do. We're almost near the end, and I would say, look, if there's a checklist, please, the starting point is a discussion. And this is the discussion where you want your kids to be on your side. You want to have that discussion being on the same page. It shouldn't be a telling off. It should be a discussion. Look, we've just had the discussions in school. What do you think? What do you think about boundaries? And I think hopefully if our weekly Tech Bite sessions can allow us to create some talking points. So this week, unfortunately, we won't have it this week, but the discussion that we've had last week regarding boundaries and what we're talking about now, about visibility of tech, how we use tech. I think if we can have that discussion, I think that would be really, really, really good. So checking would be, right, let's start discussing. Let's have a conversation. It shouldn't be a one-off conversation you have once in their lifetime and that is it. No, it's a continuous repetition of behavior. We know how to cross the road safely. In England, it was compulsory to be taught that in schools and by parents then had that conversation with us. But the conversation started in school. So please continue and have them regularly. Check friends lists, your friend list, kids' friends list. Do I really know this person? Do they really need to be in our friends? Do I really need that information to be shared with this person? If the answer is no, then delete. Really, delete. It's almost like housekeeping. When you got too much junk, get rid of it. I think you'll feel a lot better at it. If you would not say it in person, don't say it online. I think that should be a key message that should be sent to everyone, especially our kids. Make sure the privacy settings it's for friends only. Be cautious because by default, whenever we have online, apps and solutions and websites, they by default have them open. Again, if anybody wants assistance regarding that, I'm more than happy to help and sit down one-to-one sessions if need be. Not a problem. Please do contact me. Assign tech off days. You know what? Today, no technology. Disconnect to connect. Hopefully, I'll be sending a letter out tomorrow, giving you suggestions on what we can do on the long weekend. And one of them should be have no tech. Play games. Play different types of games. Put your phone away. But so I think we should assign ourselves, at least on a regular basis, tech off. Just no tech. Less talk, less play games, and things like that. Contracts. Although contracts really don't work in our household, it may work in somebody else's household. I think contracts are a good example depending on the reality. Last of all, think before you post. I think that should be a key message to kids. Think before you post. If you can delay it, it's best to do so because what that delay does, it gives more time to think. So think before you post should be a message, should be just posted and printed on that fridge of ours. That was the overall message today. If you want to communicate with me, I should have had an email address, but my email is atif.hussain, so my first name dot last name at ncbis.co.uk. I'm more than happy to help in terms of even simple discussion as I've got this tech at home, how can I secure that? Or I want to buy new tech. Can you advise me on what might be the best way? I currently don't have an ecosystem. I've got Android, I've got Apple, and I've got all sorts. Which might be the best way? I want to help you. That only starts with a discussion. Just send me an email, or if you see me in school, just stop me and say, look, I need some help with this. I'd be more than happy to do that. And please, this is a starting point, not an end. And these sessions will be on a regular basis. And I really, really hope you can join. And if not, we'll try to do them hybrid as much as possible. Thank you very much for listening and taking your time out. And I look forward to seeing you in the next session.